Okay, so I wanted to go over just quick this review here. Just kind of get over the answers and how we kind of come to those answers. So number one is saying refer to the graph below. A price floor is set at $8 will result in, and I'm going to go over my drawing tool here. Maybe, there we go. So at a price floor at $8, right, something that looks kind of like that, right? What will this result in? Well, we already know the answer is a surplus because remember, price floors, right, create a surplus. Sorry, it's kind of hard to write with this. Surplus, right? So we know that those create a surplus, right? Well, let's figure out how. So a price floor at $8 is going to cause a demand of 20 units, whatever these units are, right? But suppliers are going to be supplying 40 units, right? So because it makes sense, because our equilibrium, which is right here, the market price before intervention was $6 a unit, which meant suppliers were supplying 30 and consumers were demanding 30, right? There was no shortage, there was no surplus. But when a government comes in and puts a price floor, it says, okay, this can't price can't go below this point, right? Well, that means that it's going to benefit suppliers, but it's going to negatively affect consumers, but also to the point where it's going to lead to a surplus of items. We're just not going to have anything to do with this surplus. So that's how we come up with a surplus of 20. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Oops. And then we'll move on to the next one here. So it'd probably be helpful if you kind of went through this, obviously, on your own at first, and then kind of watch this video just to make sure you're in the right you're at the right step here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my selection tool here. Exit drawing. All right, we'll go back down. So we'll look at number 2 here. It says refer to the graph. If government establishes a minimum wage, so remember minimum wage is another price floor. So if government establishes a minimum wage at $15, how many workers will benefit from the higher wage? Well, right now, let's keep in mind our equilibrium. Our wage is at $11, right? Market price. This is before the government sets the minimum wage, which means we have 15 workers that are saying, you know what, I'll go ahead and supply or provide my service. And we have a demand of 15 employers that are saying, yeah, we demand 15 workers, right? There's no shortage, there's no surplus or anything. The government comes in and says that price is too low. We need a minimum wage set at $15 an hour, right? So we have our minimum wage, which is our price floor. Remember, the floor is always above the equilibrium. Well, again, just like in the last example, what do we get? Get a shortage. Right? In this case, we get a shortage of 10, or a surplus, I should say, sorry, surplus of 10 workers, right? Which means that 10 people are not going to be able to find jobs because employers are only at $15 an hour demanding 10 workers. But workers at $15 an hour, there's now 20 that say, yeah, I'll work for that price. Why not? That's more than we were getting. But again, it doesn't matter what the price is because now they're not going to be able to find jobs because employers are only demanding 10 workers, right? So we have this surplus, which leads to an increase in unemployment. But the question's asking us how many workers will benefit from the higher wage? Well, the only workers that will benefit are the workers that keep their jobs, right? So those are the 10 workers that are getting that wage, but everybody else loses out. Everybody else loses out. And honestly, even the workers that keep their jobs, and we talked about this in class, they might see hourly cuts, right? They might see hourly cuts at their job. They may not get fired, but they may work less hours, and then overall make less money. So that's not a good thing. But assuming that doesn't happen, about 10 of them would benefit from that. But everybody else would not come out very happy. All right, so the next one, number 3, says refer to the graph below. Who would benefit from this price floor set in the market for milk? So this is an interesting one. The whole goal of this is to obviously benefit milk producers here, right? So we have it benefits producers of milk, but let's go ahead and figure out why. Well, the market price, here we go again, the equilibrium, right, for milk was $2.25 a gallon. So the government said that's just too low. We need a higher price so milk producers, so dairy farmers can have a better time, right? So when they set this price floor at $3, what that means is milk producers are like, oh, nice. We're willing to supply, since this is a higher price, 20 gallons of milk. But consumers, who are our demand line here, they're only demanding, oops, sorry, missed the line there, 10 gallons of milk. So we're going to have a surplus of 10 gallons of milk that we don't have anything to do with, right? But who's it going to benefit? Well, at least in the short term, it's going to benefit producers of milk, not the consumers. Okay, so let's erase that and let's head down to our next question here. So which of the following is true of a price floor? Price floors are intended to help those who supply a good or service. This is true both in our last example. In our last example, we talked about dairy again. Sorry for the handwriting. It's kind of hard to write with this. Dairy farmers, right? Okay, so we talked about dairy farmers, right? But it's also true when we're talking about people providing their service as far as workers, right? As far as workers, okay? So both of those individuals are people who supply a good or service, a worker or, like in the last example, a dairy farmer. Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit. If the government establishes a minimum wage, which of the following is most likely to occur? And we kind of looked at this already, but jobs for lower skilled workers will decrease and unemployment will increase. And we figured out why. We saw that graphically. We saw how that visually works. It's because employers demand less employees than before, but employees want to work more. So a lot of people aren't going to be able to find jobs, and the people that are most affected by that are the people that minimum wage laws are intended to help, who are the lower skilled workers, so high school students, young workers in fast food type jobs, grocery stores, things like that. Minimum wage is intended to help those people, but it actually ends up hurting them, specifically if you raise minimum wage too fast or by too much. So we kind of figured that out already. This is an interesting one. A price ceiling on rent for apartments in a city could cause which of the following? We know the correct answer I've marked down here is C, so 1, 3, and 4. Well, let's see what 1, 3, and 4 is. A shortage of apartments, good, because we know price ceilings cause shortages. Lower quality apartments, because we know that if landlords can't charge very much, they're not going to update their apartments, they're not going to maintain them. And 4, a decreased quantity of apartments supplied. Well, that's true. If landlords can't make a whole lot of money, they're not going to, they're probably going to sell or convert a lot of their rental apartments into condos, and that'll take rental units off the market. But also prospective, property companies that were thinking about building rental units aren't going to do that anymore. So you're going to see a decreased quantity of apartments supplied. And in some major cities, I know it kind of sounds silly here, but you have a situation where you have tent cities, right? And we've heard about these before, specifically in, places like California and Oregon and things like that. We've seen that before. because they can't find places to live. So refer to the graph below. A price ceiling set at $300 will, what we've got is cause a shortage of 20 units. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but we've gone over this a few times now, just in this, both in class, but on this review, right? Where whatever, we don't know what these units are. At $300, suppliers are willing to supply 5 units. Consumers are demanding 25 units at $300. So we see a shortage, right, of 20. So that's kind of the little bit of explanation behind these answers. If you have any more questions on these things, please feel free to email me. We'll also go over some of this in class before next week, before we take our test. So keep that in mind. But again, thank you for checking this out. Good luck.